Mhm. Meanwhile, I have also opened YouTube just to see.
So now we are live. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone. We are sorry for a short delay, but now we are really live. Great to have you in our YouTube stream. And today we will talk about Note Assistant tool. You joined this session to familiarize yourself with the Note Assistant tool, which is aimed to improve the overall user experience. Now it is more refined, intuitive, and fast. This session is part of the SAP Cloud Lifecycle Management webcast series, and I will place a link with a schedule of previous and upcoming sessions in the chat. Our expert speakers for today are Abhiraj Suman, who is product owner in Cloud and Lifecycle Management, and Subhashish Kasta, who is senior developer also in Cloud and Lifecycle Management. My name is Larissa Brinkman from the SAP Global User Groups and Organization, and I'm your host for today. We kindly ask you to place your questions in the live chat, and we will answer them after their presentation. The replay will be available under the same YouTube link immediately after the session. With this, I wish you great interaction and ask Abhiraj to take over.
Thank you, Larissa, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session on the revamped Note Assistant. We are from the Cloud Lifecycle Management in SAP, and today we will try to understand what is there in the new revamped Note Assistant. We have the standard disclaimer that the presentation is a property of SAP and it should not be disclosed outside without the permission, and certain standard disclaimers. So what is the agenda today? So today we try to understand what is the Note Assistant, what is the need to revamp the Note Assistant, what are the new highlights that we have, the standout features, and then we have a couple of changes on the screens, which means that we have the home screen changes, we have some changes in the settings, we have improvement in the note display screen, and we also have an improvement in the entire process of how SAP notes are processed. And at the end, we also talk about how this can be made available in all the systems, how can this be updated, and then we have a demo followed by a summary of the entire session. So what is a Note Assistant? So as we already know that in SAP, the Note Assistant, or we call the standard transaction S-Note, is a tool which is used to implement and de-implement SAP notes. So any note which is released from SAP can be processed using this particular transaction. This tool is capable of identifying the prerequisites, determine all the relations between the notes and support packages, and based on that, it tries to implement the changes that is available in the notes. A note typically consists of automatic corrections, manual corrections, and transport-based correction instructions. And S-Note is capable of handling all these implementations at a single click. We also have certain other things, like things that has to be manually done because not everything is supported in S-Note. So we also have something called as manual instructions, which provides the user the information manually, which they have to follow. On the right-hand side of the screen, you would see that this is the old view of the tool that used to look like. So we used to have a summary of the list of notes that is available for that particular user to process. So what was the need to revamp? So the idea was that we have this old S-Note from quite some time now, and the idea was that we have to build something which can be capable enough to meet the existing user experiences that our customer wants to have. So in order to do this, what we did was we gathered feedback from the customer interviews. We performed a usability test in DZAG in 2019 in SAP Waldorf, and we connected with a couple of customers and tried to understand that what are the main pain points that is available for all our customers when they are trying to implement or de-implement any SAP note. So we understood that the pain points were there were too many pop-ups. It was not guided enough. The error handling was not very accurate. The usability issues were there with the manual activities display. So we have different versions of Note Assistant where we have different displays of manual activity. So that was not kind of standardized. And we also had long chain of notes, which needs to be always implemented. And somehow during the implementation process, all the information being made visible on one screen was not available. And it was also difficult to troubleshoot the issues in case we have a yellow object, I would say, or in case something has gone wrong with the note implementation, it was difficult to find out that what is the root cause over here. With all these pain points into consideration, we tried to build the new Note Assistant, and a couple of takeaways were that we have a streamlined implementation, not only implementation, but we do have a streamlined de-implementation as well. We had to rewrite the backend coding to improve the performance in the error handling. And we also understood that the tool should be customizable because every user is different. The way of how the notes has to be implemented by every user can be different. The experience that they want to have with the tool should be different. So we also made sure that we should make this customizable. At the end, it should also be guided because we also understand that not every customer or not every user will be heavily experienced on S-Note, and the tool should be good enough to guide with each and every step that needs to be performed in the process itself. And we also have to improve the manual display because the manual activity is something that has to be not ignored and it has to be processed. And we also did some enhancement on improving this display as well. We have also tried to integrate a lot of troubleshooting reports, and we have also tried to improve the log, which means that this helps the user to understand if something has gone wrong in the entire process, how it can be rectified, and the customers can take immediate actions onto it. So what's new over here? So the first change that we have is it is refined, it is intuitive, and it is faster, which means that we have tried to improve the overall user experience. And how we have done this? We have done this by making sure that the best of old Note Assistant has been retained and all the functionalities are still available. And we have tried to introduce certain new features. So the UI is now customizable as per the user preference. There are many checks which can be made based on how the home screen should look like. Going ahead in the demo, we'll also have a visualization of that. And there are also some choices that are remembered during the next login, which means to say if there is a process or there's a way in which a user processes the tool, some choices will be remembered, and in the next login, those will be retained so that the user gets the same experience again when they relaunch the tool. We also have an improved note search and the browsing of SAP notes. So in the old Note Assistant, we used to have an internal search, which means that the notes which are already available in the system, for those, the search was possible, but the browsing of all the notes available in the service marketplace, available in the system was not feasible. So now we have improved that. We have an end-to-end search available with a lot of filter options also available. It is also easy to keep the system updated with the latest SAP notes implemented, which means that we will also ensure that the user is notified about new releases that happens from SAP, which makes sure that we have S-Note already updated. And we have a streamlined implementation, less pop-ups so that the user do not have to do multiple clicks in the process. So we have tried to consolidate everything together so that a decision can be made and this process can be streamlined. And similarly, we have also improved the note display screen, which also gives you a efficient display of the note log, efficient display of how the CIs will be displayed, what is valid, what is invalid, along with list of actions that can be made available in the display itself. So these are some of the highlights. We, of course, have much more changes in the tool, which we will see in the demo. Now, I would also like to take some time to just discuss about some more highlights. So till now, we discussed about overall changes that we are going to have, but let us also talk about screen-specific changes that has been done. So now if you observe, we have a totally new look and feel of the entire UI. We have a guided information section, which can be hidden based on the customizing. We have the check note assistant option, which means that every time we have an update at SAP side, if something has been released, which should be implemented in the system, will be notified to the user so that we make sure that S-Note has always been updated. The reason why we have introduced this is because it is understood that in order to implement any SAP note, it is important the tool itself should be updated first. And this is an attempt to ensure that we always have each and every customer always updated with SAP notes. The work list and browser is now integrated in the single screen. In the previous tool, we used to have it in the different screens. So now everything is integrated together to get a better experience. And based on the usability, the browser can be also minimized. The search for SAP notes is also now available at one support launchpad, which means an external search is available, and the result will only display the valid notes just to make sure that we do not have a lot of output result and invalid results. We have also narrowed down the search results based on when it was released. It has to be processed by which user, and all different other filters are also available. The worklist section is also now organized. We will have multiple tabs, which basically means that the user has the freedom to display all the list of different notes, and for each node display, we have multiple options also made available, which can be directly accessed from the home screen itself rather than going into the node. We also have an option to mark the notes as favorites. So we often also know that there are some special notes which needs to be monitored on a regular basis. So these can also be marked as favorites, which can be always displayed in the home screen. The next recommended operation based on the note status is something which we have introduced in the overall tool. So based on what is the state of the SAP note, the next operation that has to be performed on the note is also indicated directly in the home screen itself. We have new options to launch the Note Assistant settings now. So the idea of settings is that the user can customize a lot of changes, and the user is also free to decide on which download procedure to follow. And search using the text string is also now possible, which was earlier not available. So let us come to the settings part. So this setting is in general for the entire tool. What we can do is we have a couple of screens over here, and based on the screens, the settings can be managed. So for example, in the home screen, if we want to have limited tab selections, if we want that the tool should be loaded quickly, then we also have settings to ensure that we do not check each and every note on every launch. So such kind of things is available so that it can be customized, and based on the usage, the user can select how they want to launch the home screen. Along with the home screen, we also have multiple other screens where we can take a decision of how we want the Note Assistant to behave. Along with this, we also have two types of display available now. We have the display in the PDF or the HTML format. The user can decide which type of display do they prefer, and based on what they have decided in the settings, the following will be always kept in mind, and during the entire processing of any SAP note, the same display will happen. Now we also have a change in the note download procedure. So as we know that earlier we used to have a standard SAP report, which needs to be executed in order to decide what is the download procedure that has to be followed. That is also incorporated into the user settings now, and based on the settings, the download is also followed. Now on the display screen, we have tried to keep the old look, but of course we have tried to also distribute the screen in a way that we have multiple options made available. The user is aware that what are the next steps that they can perform, and it also gives a better overview of which are the changes that will be valid for the user and how it will be implemented. So we have the first improvement is we have a collapsible and enhanced header section, which gives a brief header information about every SAP note. This can be expanded and collapsed based on the user needs. We also have now, as I mentioned, that we have split the section into three split the screen into 3 sections. The left-hand side indicates the list of corrections that is available. And we also have a highlighter available, which tells that which particular correction instruction is valid for the system and what all objects will be implemented in the system. On the right-hand side, we see the available actions. The available actions means that what are the possible options that will be made available for this particular note, which is possible. For example, just to take an example, in the current display, we have a note which is valid and is in status can be implemented, which means that the only available action in terms of processing that has to be made available is to implement. So the de-implementation is not there. And that is the reason we have not listed the implementation option in the available option. Similarly, if we had some other statuses based on that, the available actions is also decided and displayed. We also have a note log in a new structured format, which improves the readability. We have a tree format now, which kind of displays the end-to-end interaction between the system and how the notes was processed. So we have tried to refine this. And we have the available views section, which talks about the multiple capabilities that the user gets in order to search for the list of prerequisites to get the successor nodes and also to know the objects affected. So probably if they want to troubleshoot this node, this can also be done via the available views section. Now let's come to the implementation part. During the implementation, we have a streamlined processing now. So as we mentioned in the beginning, we had a complaint that there are a lot of pop-ups that comes across. So now we have changed it to a single questionnaire screen, which means that all the decision making has to be done in the first screen itself, and based on the user selection, the next steps in the note implementation will be done. The prerequisites will be displayed over here itself and will be asked to download. And once the user confirms everything, the next steps will be taken. We also have the side effect SAP notes, which are also shown, and it is always a recommendation that these notes are checked before we implement the target note that we are trying to implement. This also replaces the multiple pop-ups. So if you see on the top right-hand side of the screen, we have the questions section, which basically deals with all the pop-ups that we had in the old note assistant, so that all the questions can be answered, and then everything can be done at a single go. Coming to the object screen, the most important screen when it comes to knowing about what is getting implemented, how it is getting implemented. So we have one single screen with all the details about what is being implemented and what are the statuses of each and every object. We have the entire queue displayed on the left-hand side, and all the corrections that are all the objects that are being implemented is displayed on the right-hand side. In case we have a red object or a yellow object, we also have an option where the screen dynamically changes, and it helps the user in understanding that what are the next steps that they have to perform on that object, and based on that, they can also troubleshoot the problem at that very moment. The long text, as I mentioned, is expanded automatically. And in case of error and manual, in case of any error or warning, a manual confirmation will be also taken at the same place. So with this, we come to the end of some of the improvements that we have on the revamped Note Assistant. In the demo, we'll also see a couple of more improvements. But before we go to the demo, let us also understand how every user or how every customer can update to the new Note Assistant. So the new Note Assistant is available from SAP Basis 750 SP0 onwards, and it can be made available in the system by implementing the SAP Note 3051466, which is now released. This note contains a transport-based correction instruction, which means the TCI implementation has to be done. The note also contains an implementation guide and a user guide, which explains all the details about how this note has to be implemented in the system. And it also explains that how the new tool has to be used. So at the end, we recommend that since S-Note is a tool which is used on a daily basis for all our customers, it is recommended that if you are on the available SAP Basis releases, then please do implement all the new Note so that you can get the new latest user experience of the entire tool. With this, we will now have a look at the demo. And for this, I will hand over to Subhashish. So over to you, Subhashish. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Abraj. And let me start sharing my screen before I present the demo. All right, so the S-Note transaction gets launched in the usual way. The transaction code remains S-Note. But when you launch it, you see this new screen that is now the revamped Note Assistant screen. Now, this screen can be broadly divided into three sections. The first one being the guidance section. This is a section where the customers or the users are informed of what they can do with this current screen. And also, if there are any actions recommended by the tool, then such an action would be also mentioned in this particular section itself. For example, in this case, you see that it mentions that the Note Assistant is not up to date. So please go to check Note Assistant to know more. So this is, for example, guiding to a next action. Then we have the browser section. So the browser section is the old Note Assistant browser, but now it's integrated into the home screen itself. So the options remain, these usual options are all there. So you have the note number, but then you have the search text. So this is a new addition that has been done where the users can provide a text which will be searched in either the title or in the full body of the note. And then there are also other normal options of searching in the components, the processors, the processing status, and the applications component. In addition to that, we have a new option for searching notes now at the SAP One Support Launchpad. So earlier the search was only a local system search, which means that only notes which are downloaded in the system could be searched. But now the provision is also there to search for notes which are not in the system, but they are valid. As an input to such a search, it could be either a single note number or a search text or application components. You can also provide additional filters based on release dates. And if such a date is provided, as we would do now, so we would provide a certain date, and the search would be now performed on or after this particular date that is given here. So this is generally the browser section. Now we go to the top toolbar. So we have the usual options of variants of downloading an SAP note, of uploading a note, as well as uploading a TCI. These buttons are available also in the menu. And the results of these would be shown in the bottom section, the third section that I'm yet to come to. The results would be shown as a list in this particular section. Now, if I have to explain this bottom section, then you see that it has the new notes, in process notes, inconsistent notes, and your favorite notes. From the old Note Assistant also, these options were there, and we have taken the same things here as well, just that the way we are representing and showing this information is different. And this is only done to simplify the experience of browsing through a list of notes. If you remember the old Note Assistant, it had the options of new, in process, and inconsistent. But to that, we have added another option called your favorite notes. So what this allows is that the users would now be able to define or set certain notes as their favorites. And this could be done by selecting the note and going to the favorite option and setting it as mark as favorite. If that is done, of course, in the screen itself, the note is shown, but also the note is then listed in the your favorite notes section. And this would contain all the notes which are favorite for the user. And the user may also later at a point of time set these notes as or unmark these notes as favorites, and then they would be removed from there. In addition to that, the notes here, the information that is shown is almost the same as before. So all the standard details of the notes are there, the note number, the short text, and the version, and its implementation status. But in addition to that, we also have a column called SAP Note Operation, which would suggest the next operation for the given note. So for example, in this case, we see that the note is valid and its status is can be implemented. And therefore, SAP suggests that this note be implemented. And therefore, the button is mentioned as implement SAP Note. And as you start using Note Assistant, you would also see that there are other options available in this place. If I go to in process notes, where I see that there is a larger set of notes, you can also see that I can perform operations on multiple nodes together. And for example, there is now an option to download nodes only if required. So this would mean that if the node has a newer version, only then the node would be downloaded. Otherwise, the node would not be downloaded. So this improves also the performance. And this would also help for regular upkeep of the system in case you would want to see if there are newer versions of nodes that are not yet downloaded. Also, the usual option of downloading forcefully, which is the force download option that you see here, that is also still there in as an option here. Next, we have the option to view the settings. So in the settings, you have possibilities of changing a lot of things that you see in the screen. These are in general user settings, which means it would affect only your view of Note Assistant. One of the option, for example, is to hide the info text that is displayed at the top, the guided display. So in case you would want to hide that, and then you can do that. You would have also options to hide certain tabs that you see here. So if you are not interested in, for example, inconsistent notes to be displayed, then you can unmark them. We also have some performance improvements possible here. So if you say, if this checkbox of always load note data for all tabs is unchecked, then at launch of Note Assistant, it would not load all the data, but it would only load the data that is currently being displayed. This saves and improves the performance of the launch of the Note Assistant. And then we have the option of checking the Note Assistant if it is up to date or not at every launch. And I will come to this as I go to the check Note Assistant option. We have also other customizing options for note display, for note processing, and for note download. The note download is not a user setting, but it is applicable for all the users. So it's a system-wide setting. So the user can then set the procedure for the note download. It would be, of course, either HTTP protocol or the download service. So either of one of them they have to select and provide the RFC destination, whichever is applicable. There is an also provision of restoring defaults, and that would go to the default and the recommended settings that SAP provides. Now let me come to the check Note Assistant option. So the check Note Assistant option, if clicked on here, it runs a manual check and sees if the Note Assistant is up to date, the tool itself is up to date, or if there are any important fixes that are missing. So if there are important fixes that are missing, then this would also provide the list of such notes. As we see now, it provides two lists of notes here. The browser section at the top can also be minimized in case there is a need to provide more screen space to the list of notes that is displayed, the work list basically, which is displayed at the bottom half. So that is also done. And you would see a lot of these buttons to minimize some certain sections across Note Assistant. And these buttons and these choices are remembered, which means that per user. So which means that if you have minimized a certain section, it would remain minimized when you launch it again. Now let me implement a note. So implement of a note can be done directly by clicking on that implement SAP note button from the screen itself. And what you now see is that on click of that, it opens this first screen. So this is the first screen that we also call as questionnaire screen. So if you are used to the old Note Assistant, you would remember that the old Note Assistant had a lot of pop-ups as you're implementing notes. These pop-ups used to come one by one, and it would also depend on the number of questions that would need to be asked. That many times the pop-ups would appear. These would sometimes be questions, this would sometimes be information. We have tried to now collect all these questions and informations together into one screen, and that would be listed down here. So in this case, you see that it mentions that the note is processed by some other user, and there is also a list of note that in the bottom half that we're talking about here, and it asks if we want to change it to the current user. And the answer is by default set as yes for all of these, which means also that we are reducing the number of clicks that an user has to do if they would want to proceed. This can also contain other questions if the need is there. I click on next, and clicking on next leads me, of course, to the transport request screen, which is where we have to provide the transport request. Up next, we see now the implementation queue. Now this screen can be broadly divided into two sections. On the left side, you see is the list of correction instructions and as well as a list of notes that would be implemented in this for implementing my current note. So that is a queue, and in the queue, the correction instruction that we are currently implementing would be also highlighted, and an icon in the action column also suggests that that is the one that is getting implemented now. The CI type column also indicates there what is the kind of CI that we are implementing. So there are 3 kinds of CIs generally that a node can implement: a manual CI, an automatic CI, and of course a transport-based correction instruction as well. And the right side of the screen would be changed accordingly. For example, now we are implementing a manual CI. The right side now shows the entire text of the manual CI. The improvement here as compared to the old note assistant is that we have provided a much bigger screen space to display the manual activity, which can go long. In certain notes, there is a lot of text that is mentioned, and therefore the space to read and display those all that text was required, and we have also increased the space in this regard. And if I go ahead, then it shows also the next manual CI. And a manual CI has to be, of course, performed by the user, which means that whatever instruction is provided, they would have to follow it. And once that is followed, they have to click on the confirm and next button to go to the next queue of correction instruction. So if that is done, now it leads me to the next queue of correction instruction, which is an automatic correction instruction. So as you see here on the left side, now we are in the 3rd correction instruction, which is the one which is highlighted. On the right side, you see the list of objects that is getting affected by this particular correction instruction. So the simulation has already been performed, and what you see on the right side is also, along with the list, the simulation result. And in case the simulation has resulted in any warnings or errors for any object, then on the right side itself, you would also see the long text for that warning. For example, what you see here is that the first 2 objects in this list, they have a yellow traffic light, and which means that there is a warning for them. And because of that, the short text and if you look at the bottom half of the right section, you see that there is a long text which explains also what the warning is about. And of course, that can be minimized if we need to improve the screen space, but that is also shown. Along with that, there is also a provision now in the screen itself to confirm the implementation. So the confirmation is needed, of course, because there is a warning and the user still wants to go ahead. So that would require a user confirmation. And that provision is also put in the same screen. If you recollect with the old note assistant, that used to be another pop-up that used to come up. So overall, the idea still remains to reduce the number of user clicks that is necessary and the pop-ups that user would have to see. I go ahead now. It brings up the activation of these objects. Changes are already applied here. And now it would lead me to the next set of correction instructions. So now you see there are 2 correction instructions highlighted on the left side. On the right side, everything is green. All the simulation is fine. So there are no warnings, no errors. And therefore, you don't also see the long text section in an expanded format. It's minimized. And it's only if the user is interested still to know more about the simulation result, they can expand that as well. I would go ahead by clicking on next here as well. And that would then lead me again to the activation of all these objects that we have now applied. And if it would activate, it would then automatically lead me again to the next correction instruction, which is again all green, all fine. So I proceed here and I activate the changes. And once this is done, now I see that there are further manual activities in this case. So these are post-implementation manual activities, which the user would have to also perform and confirm. I'll just confirm for the sake of this demo. And once all of these are confirmed, the node status becomes completely implemented, as you see in the implementation state column. I would now also, for the sake of the demo, de-implement this node and show how the de-implementation experience is. It is very similar to the implementation. The questionnaire is not shown because there was nothing to be asked. So it directly leads me to the simulation result of the first set of correction instruction that it is de-implementing. On the left side, the action column indicates as well that this is a de-implementation action. And the simulation of here as well is all fine because everything is green here. So I would proceed with the de-implementation. And once this is activated, we would also see again the manual activity, which was confirmed earlier. Now it also shows that activity, but it also tells the user to revert these steps that was done. So the steps are provided, the user would have to revert the steps if they want to completely de-implement the node. So now the node is de-implemented, status can be implemented. And now I would also go to the node display screen. So the node display screen again has a guidance section at the top which provides the details for that given note. The header section is also available, which can now also be collapsed. The header section also has an information if the note that I am viewing is in the latest version or if there is a newer version available but not yet downloaded. So in this case, the icon is green and it also shows in the tooltip that the note is in the latest version. So no action required as such, but this information is also shown. We also have the usual stuff at the header, but then coming to the bottom part, the bottom left part, we have the list of correction instructions. The list of correction instructions are the valid ones are highlighted. So in this particular example, all of these are valid, so all of these are highlighted here. And now coming immediately to the rightmost part, we have an available action section and an available view section. So the available action section suggests only the actions that are possible for the node. So if, for example, in this case, the node is valid and therefore it can be implemented, the available action suggests an option to implement it. But in case the node was already implemented, it would have only the option to de-implement. So the available action is also intelligently showing only the action that is possible for the node, along with the list of some standard options like check, note log, other things as well. So for example, if I click on note log, now this has also been improved. The note log is now structured in a tree format with respect to the version number, which makes it easier to navigate through a note log in case it goes really big with a lot of nodes and a lot of versions of nodes and a lot of information. And then we come to the available view section. These contains some reports that you would find quite useful. For example, there's a list of prerequisite nodes. So it shows for the given node, what are the prerequisite nodes and what are its statuses and other details. We also have other available views here as well for the user to troubleshoot and understand more about. We also have some options in the menu. So the standard options are there. There's an option also to launch the notice in user settings and display the note in the launchpad. For example, if I open the settings, I also see the same settings that I had seen earlier in the S Notes home screen. Yep, so that brings an end to the demo. But I would also take the opportunity now to share a small video for where we have explained this in detail. There's a small preview as well, so I'll just play the video.
The Note Assistant tool is now faster, more intuitive, and offers improved user experience. Whether you want to implement new notes to fix critical bugs in your application or perform regular maintenance of your current notes, the revamped Note Assistant is here to help. Launching the Note Assistant opens the new home screen. Here you see an overview of all the key information that you may need. You can browse an auto-generated list of notes that might interest you and also mark notes as favorites. And now you can search for valid notes in the SAP One Support Launchpad. We know that Note Assistant users have different preferences, so we decided to make Note Assistant fully customizable. Check out the customizing options in the Note Assistant user settings. Plus, the tool will now automatically remember certain choices that you make on the user interface. This means you don't have to perform the same adjustments each time you start the transaction. The implementation of notes has now been streamlined. Instead of clicking through multiple pop-ups, a single questionnaire screen now displays all the relevant questions and details for you to confirm. The correction and note queue, plus the objects being modified, are now shown in a single screen, so you can easily track where you are during the implementation process. The SAP Note display screen has retained its familiar look and now comes with additional options and customization settings. Valid corrections are highlighted on the left of the screen. If you're not interested in all this technical information, you can hide the left side and your preference will be remembered. It's now easier than ever to find out the details of all prerequisite notes, successor notes, or have a quick look at the list of affected repository objects. The note log has been restructured. Each downloaded version in the system is clearly indicated, which makes the document much easier to read. Want to know more? Click on the onboarding note linked below and switch to the new Note Assistant today.
All right, so that brings us to an end of what we wanted to share in this session. And now I think we can also take any questions that are there. So Larissa, over to you for that.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much. Thank you, Subhashish and Abhiraj, for this presentation and demo and the video. I think the video is very helpful, especially for those who are not so familiar with this topic. So I was wondering if this video is publicly available. Maybe you can place the link in the chat.
Yes, it is available. It's a YouTube video itself, so we'll paste it in the chat.
Okay, so we can do this, and I have one question in the chat, and the question is, what happens with old version of Note Assistant? So as you were, of course, explaining this new look and feel of the tool. So would this only new version is available now, or what happened actually to the older version?
Okay, I can take that question. So yes, a very valid question. What happens to the old tool? So the old tool still remains. We have just changed the transaction name, I would say. We recommend every customer to use the new tool, but the old tool will be still available with the transaction s_note_old. This can be also used as a reference still. So the old tool still is available.
Okay, thank you for that. So to all the participants of this session, please state your questions in the live chat. We still have some time and our experts are available. So would be great if you can leverage this chance. So we seems to have very quiet chat today. So maybe you can also come up with a question that is very often asked. So we can, with this, we can probably give some inspiration for more questions.
Yeah. I think we have been rolling this tool out for quite some months now, and we do have a couple of repeated questions, which is always asked. Maybe we can also try to answer those. So maybe the first one would be a lot of users were very happy to see that the search functionality has been improved. But the question was that how will it work? Does it has to have some technical challenges? Do the user has to do something additional over here in order to make sure the entire search works? So Vishish, do you want to answer that?
Yes. So the search functionality would work if the ANST search works. So ANST is, of course, a separate tool where there was already a provision to do a note search. If the necessary notes are implemented on the ANST front to have the search enabled there, then in S-Note as well, the note search would work. And in case the note search does not work, then the message shown there already lists the note number as well, which the customer would have to implement in their system to have the note search working.
Thank you, Subhashish, for the answer. Probably you can also help in another question that we have often being asked. So what about the performance? So we also talk about that the note assistant sometimes take a lot of time to load. Is there any way in the new S-Note we can improve this performance, or how it has been addressed?
Yes, I think performance was a key area that we concentrated on because there were concerns with the note assistant. So the note assistant now in general, I would say would be faster than its previous version. Technically speaking, we have made changes, complete changes into the way it works to improve its performance. So it's far more streamlined. And as well, there are some tunings which the customers can do. The default settings provided in the S-Note is already enhanced for the best performance. However, if the customer would want to have a look at it, they can also see that, for example, loading of notes that happens at each launch of the note assistant, that not all the tabs are loaded, because from our understanding of the old note assistant, that was one area where it used to take a lot of time, because with time, the customer systems, they would have a lot of notes in their system, and loading so much of note data at every launch of S-Note itself would take sometimes a good amount of time. So that is one area where that we have improved in. The customers would also notice in general a lot of improvements, a lot of faster processes of implementing notes. And of course, there is less clicks involved to perform any action. That automatically also improves the performance or the time that the user takes to perform certain actions.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you. I can't see any additional questions in the chat. I would say, again, thank you very much for your presentation, for also bringing up some question to the attention of the participants. As I've already indicated, the replay of this session will be available immediately under the YouTube link. And with this, we are almost at the end of the planned time. With this, I would say thank you to all the participants who were in the session today. We hope to welcome you in one of our upcoming sessions. And with this, I would like to end this stream now.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.